Welcome back. Well, there is so much happening at the Tshwane Council that one simply cannot keep up. Moronwa Makarela was accused of producing a fake insolvency rehabilitation certificate. Remember that? His party, COPE, then elected Justice Ifanyatswa to replace him, but he's now been accused of having two identity documents. The party says the allegations are false. So let's discuss this now in person and exactly how can actually one person walk around with more than one ID. Calvin Rafadi joins us from Biz Traces. Thank you so much, Calvin, for your time, and a very good morning to you. Even the idea of obtaining two IDs does not seem impossible given the context that we're dealing with in South Africa about how criminality and criminal activity just seems to be on the rise. But how are two IDs actually obtained by one individual?
Morning, Faith, and morning to your viewers. Yes, it is possible. There are many citizens, even politicians, even business people that are carrying multiple IDs. So now how the process is done, let's say now you are born on the 1st of January in 1970. So your ID number will start with 700101 and then the rest of the numbers. So what they actually do now, they go and motivate at Home Affairs. They say, no, I was not actually born on the 1st. I was actually born on the 2nd. Now, if that is the case, then your ID number, the first three-digit number will change to 7000102, and automatically the rest of the numbers will change. Now, that is multiple IDs. Now, what normally happens, why they do this, most of the people, is because on their first ID, you'll find them, they are sequestrated, they are liquidated on other companies, and even they've got other bank accounts at other banks.
With the one ID?
With the one ID
of the
1st January.
Got you.
So now, if they want to now hide assets, or they now want to move from sequestration or liquidation, now they go and motivate that their date of birth was incorrect. But here's something for the law enforcement to take home, especially the SIU and your commercial forensic investigators, even in the Hawks, because most of the time they'll focus on one ID and then just go after the assets and do lifestyle auditing on that particular person. Yet they do not know that there is another ID. So the first point of departure in every vetting, how it should be done, even in politics, they should now visit the Home Affairs and obtain what we call a 212. Now with that, there's a certificate on the startup documents, they give it to you. It's going to show that BI02. So meaning that a birth certificate was issued and an ID was issued. So if it says BI04, it means two birth certificates were issued under your fingerprint and two IDs. So that's how they manipulate the system.
Hold on a second, though, but help me out. So let's say that somebody is trying to hide money with the first ID, right? But it's still Faith. I don't know if you understand. So my picture is still the same picture. I'm still the same human being. I'm just utilizing two different IDs for the purpose of carrying out clearly nefarious activities. So does it matter, or is it the only thing that is a big concern is the ID number? Because in that case, my face then doesn't matter. The fact that I did it, me as the human being, I'm the one that got themselves insolvent. I'm the one that got themselves into dodgy business dealings, and through my first ID, my face doesn't change in the second ID. It's still me. I'm just operating under a different alias. Why can't law enforcement be able to bog down on that?
Yeah, like I said, the facial recognition still stays the same.
Yeah.
The name still is Faith Mangope.
Okay.
The only thing that changes automatically is just your one digit on the date of birth and automatically the rest of the numbers. Now, the tricky part, how they manipulate the system as well, the first point of departure, they do not open a bank account in the same bank with a different ID. So they will choose a particular bank to do those transactions with the first ID and go to a different bank and do different transactions with a different
existences, ID. Right? So
exactly.
I can open up a bank account with my one ID, and I can open up 3 bank accounts with a different ID. And because banks and, well, everything is linked to your identity document, well, now obviously your fingerprints linked to your identity document, then they'll automatically, you're almost separating yourself as different human beings. But where does the biometric and your fingerprint now plays around? Will it, if I'm at the bank, for example, with, let's say, different IDs and different accounts, if I have to use my fingerprint, will that not be able to track and trace the other IDs and the other document and other accounts in other places?
Yeah, here's the thing. With the new system, the harness system, when you apply for a smart card ID, the fingerprint can pick it up. But some of the banks, they can't pick up a different ID, especially if you're not owing them, meaning you do not have a credit card with them or high purchase a vehicle or a bond. So as long as you just have a savings account. So it's easy now to come back with a different ID and different, especially in the ones before the harness system was introduced. That's why we've seen in many politicians and many business guys, most of the white collar crime, most of the money that's have suffered outside the country,
and the money
it was done through this particular type of a scenario, type of a method. So we're sitting with a problem whereby proper vetting needs to be done. And like I say, law enforcement needs to start their first point of departure at the Home Affairs to obtain this, what we call a BI2, a BI2 and a BI04. Because a lot of guys now, they are sitting with multiple IDs. Some are even sitting with BI06, 3 IDs.
Okay, you've just said multiple business people and politicians. According to your investigation, because I know you investigate this stuff, how high ranking are these politicians and how high profile are these business people?
Well, the number is high. It's high, and there are serious business guys and politicians well known in South Africa, whereby they were liquidated and even sequestrated on other companies. But now, if you check on their profiles, they operate on a different ID. And some even operated on even 3 IDs or even 4 IDs.
So we're talking here about high-profile politicians, not just your, your local councillor.
No, not just that. Not just that. It was an ongoing crime. There was a serious loophole when it comes to that Home Affairs. But like I said, I think with the harness system, they tried to improve the system. But it was very rife, and it was, I wouldn't say it was commonly known. But that's why we urge that this is a take-home for the SIU, there's a take-home for the Hawks, and even the guys that are vetting politicians, that's where the first point of departure they need to start.
But then you see, when you're speaking about vetting politicians, that makes me feel as though we've got a lot of politicians that are, to carry multiple IDs means that you're engaging in criminal activity, right? It's not legal. And if it's not legal, does that not make you a criminal? So then I have to ask myself, how many criminals do we have walking around in suits with political power and governing power, but they're actually criminals?
Yes, one can say that, because remember, some they do it to hide criminal records, to get a second ID. Some they do it because they are liquidated and sequestrated. Some they do it because they've got offshore accounts and the money is already siphoned outside the country. Like I say, the most crime that has hampered the country is a white-collar crime. And that's how they do it. And
so let's get clarity here. There's if I've got my and it's beautiful on the video wall, if I've got my green ID book, and I'm old school, so I still have my green ID book, I need to actually change it. And I've got, for example, that card. I've got 2 ID books, right? So I've got 2 ID documents. So you're not talking about the 2 ID documents. You're talking about what? The ID number itself, your identity number.
Yes, different identity number. Remember, when you've got your old ID book, it's still the same ID numbers, still the same names under your name. So how they manipulated the system, especially with the old IDs, whereby now they just change the date of birth and automatically the rest of the numbers changes.
So you become a new person.
You become a new person altogether. And normally people that are doing vetting, what they do, they'll take just the ID number and run it on the system like your XDS, where they can see you've got properties, movable assets, immovable assets, and then that's just the end of it.
So it can show that I've got a, what is it called, a savings account, and maybe like, let's say a couple of accounts, and that's the one ID where I keep it clean, and the other stuff obviously has got the real stuff that whatever it is that I'm accused of, but they will never, you'll run the clean ID and leave the other stuff as well.
Exactly the point. Exactly the point.
Sure.
Now, going into most of the elections now, the vulnerability about the old IDs, the green book IDs, because in the old days, I mean, with that, they are so vulnerable, whereby one can just peel off the photo and insert another photo of themselves, and then just put an iron and iron it, so you can use your ID but with a different face. Now, the danger part about going to the election, and we've seen it, they've confessed even on your show at some point, The drug addicts, they sell their ID books as far as 300, 400 rands to a point that they can easily manipulate the system when it comes to vote. Because all they will do is give it to an illegal foreigner, and then they just peel it off, and then insert
their photograph.
They put their photograph, and they can easily go and vote. So I think IEC...
And they can vote more than once. Well, different people can vote more than once with the same, wouldn't they? Or
no,
you
can't. You can't. Remember, they have to put an ink on your thumb. So, but if you are an illegal foreigner and I've got your ID, I'll just insert my facial photo, and then I can just go and vote once. And because I got a consent from you, perhaps you are a drug addict or you sold it for 300, you wouldn't worry that I need to apply for an ID to go and vote. So the system needs to tighten their strength so that they are not manipulated even towards the election.
But then that in itself speaks about gaps even within Home Affairs itself. Somebody's allowing this to happen, right? I don't think that they are that naive to think that when somebody comes in and says, hey, my birthday has changed, or there has to be somebody or people inside, as we've seen with Home Affairs, and as we've seen with Home Affairs officials themselves being found to be caught wanting where abiding by the law is concerned, that allows for this to happen. Because then somebody's allowing it to happen, and somebody from inside.
Yes, no, indeed. There are people that are allowing it inside because there are certain documentation that you need to submit so that they can motivate the system. Some they even motivate it with just your the crèche certificate that you were at crèche but your parents died and then there was a mistake. So those type of affidavits and documentation, they are there just to motivate for the ID number so that it can be changed. So it will be filed and then somebody has to feed the system. So the system is fed and then you have now obtained a new ID and you've got two IDs now. But mostly, especially politicians, they used that type of a method to hide assets, and if this one he fails, they are sequestrated, liquidated, they jump into the new one. So the vetting system needs to be, tight things very tight.
You know, Calvin, the more we speak about some of the dealings that are happening within our country, I think the more South Africans feel absolutely discombobulated with just how much crime happens, and not just amongst the criminals, but by those who are supposed to actually uphold our law and govern us so that the criminals don't win. And that's the scary part, but we'll leave it there for this morning. Much appreciated, as always, for your time. Calvin Rafadi from BizTraces. There you have it. You can actually have two identity numbers, not even identity documents, two identity. You can be two different people or three different people and utilize, of course, that identification for different kind of activities. Clearly, a vetting system is needed so that we can just hog down when it comes to this kind of criminal activity. But